So earlier today, Dana White and the UFC officially announced the UFC 308 card going to be taking place in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and it is stacked. I would argue that this is going to be more stacked than UFC 306, which was going to be regarded as one of the best cards of the year, taking place in the Sphere, and this is even more stacked in my opinion. I do just have to apologize at the start of the video. I've kind of lost my voice, as I have tried to record this video numerous times, and I just end up talking about the main event way too much, so I'm going to try and quickly get through that one and maybe make a separate video on that one because there's a lot to talk about in my opinion on that one. But also with these fights, I think there's a lot of storyline to them. Ankalaev is not going to get a title shot. He is going to be fighting Alexander Rakic instead because apparently Alex Pereira, deservedly so, wants to take a bit of a break and return at the start of next year. And then Dan Ige was promised that spot on UFC 306. But now he's going to be fighting at UFC 308 instead against a dangerous up-and-coming contender. We've got a rematch between Gane and Volkov, not taking place in Paris. We've also got Whittaker fighting against Chimaev. And Chimaev was in the hospital just like 6 or 7 weeks ago with a career-threatening illness potentially, which is why he had to pull out of that fight. And instead Whittaker went out there and defeated Ankalaev. And the main event, Topuria versus Holloway, was not expected to headline this event. It was actually meant to headline UFC 307 and potentially UFC 309, but I think that the UFC probably must have other plans for those events. We don't know the UFC 307 main event. If you wanted my best guess, I actually think it's going to be Pantoja headlining it, but I know nothing about that, so it'll be interesting to kind of see what actually happens in that one. But Ilia Topuria fights against Max Holloway. I do want to make a separate one about this because I have recorded this video numerous times and I've been getting to like the 8, the 9 and the 10 minute mark every recording, and that's why I've got no voice. So I'm going to make a separate one just about this one here. But it is the volume versus the power in my opinion. You know, Max Holloway, very well known for his volume. He has landed a lot of volume throughout his career. I believe he has landed the most significant strikes in UFC history, and it's not even close. And recently he has been finding finishes, not only at 145, but also at 155 pounds. And that fight against 155-pound Gaethje is interesting in my opinion because he looked like he had actually put on weight to fight at that weight class. He looked like he had put on good weight and was preparing for that move to 155 pounds, which was, well, pretty long rumored at this point because he maybe thought he was never going to get another title shot at 145 again. So now, after about 3 months or so, he's going to have to potentially lose that muscle, or maybe he has already done so, and then come back down to 145 pounds. Ilia Topuria is coming off the best performance of his career, the best win of his career, probably the best win any active featherweight could actually get at the moment, against Alexander Volkanovski, where he was able to knock him out. I do actually think that he didn't look like the more technical striker out of the two, but he did rush forward and was pressuring and did land the big-time power shot, which did put down and put out Alexander Volkanovski. Prior to that, had that good win over Josh Emmett, but Emmett, I guess in that matchup, he just kind of shelled up a little bit, and Topuria really showcased that he does have 5-round cardio and he can push for 5 rounds. Prior to that, he beat Bryce Mitchell, which was a dangerous matchup for him at the time, and submitted him, and knocked out Jai Herbert, who was at 155 pounds for that one there. I do think that in this one here, I'm going to go with the volume of Holloway. I do have my reasons for it, but as I said, I've kind of lost my voice. I think I'm going to make a separate video about this one. But there is a lot of storyline, I think, to break down on this one. I think there's a lot to talk about. I think that one thing that a lot of people are overlooking is Topuria's grappling, because I think he's a very, very dangerous grappler, and that could be potentially where he's able to find a lot of success against Holloway if Holloway finds success on the feet. Now we have Whittaker, I guess, rebooked against Chimaev, and I actually do think that Whittaker is going to be the one to take down Chimaev for the first time. Chimaev, as I said, you know, prior to the Ikram Liskarov new fight for Whittaker, he pulled out, and there were photos of him in the hospital. It looked pretty serious. You know, Guram Katatalitsi was by his side, and there were other people as well kind of trying to look out for Chimaev. Once again, not for the first time, rumors of him potentially having to retire, because it sounds like Chimaev just kind of very unfortunately has a naturally very weak immune system, and that's really sad to see. And I think that, just kind of coming out of an illness just a few weeks, and then now this fight's only going to be taking place in about 5 weeks, it might be too quick of a turnaround. But I do look at red flags as well from the Chimaev side, because I look at the Kamaru Usman fight where he found a lot of success in round 1, but in round 2 and 3, he wasn't the same fighter, and Usman was able to take over in that matchup. I think that it is actually a shame, and this is going to sound nuts to say, but I do think it is a little bit of a shame that we didn't see Whittaker versus Aliskerov get pushed for multiple rounds. We didn't actually see Whittaker defend multiple takedowns from Aliskerov, and if we saw him defend multiple takedowns from Aliskerov, I actually would have been a lot more confident in him in this matchup against Chimaev. But in my opinion, this being a 5-round co-main event, if Whittaker can survive round 1, maybe even round 2, which I do believe he's going to be able to do, I think he can really take over in rounds 3, 4, and 5, and maybe not necessarily find a late finish, but find a lot of success. So I am going to go with Whittaker to win a decision on those later rounds, and I do think that a big storyline that maybe will be ignored potentially is the fact that Chimaev was hospitalized not all that long ago. We have the rematch between Cyril Gane and Alexander Volkov. I know a lot of fans really don't like this matchup, but I actually do think that it makes some sense in multiple ways. Yes, when they fought for the first time, Cyril Gane did win this fight 50-45 on 2 scorecards, 49-46 on 1, but I feel like something that maybe people will ignore is the fact that Volkov, in Gane's entire career, is actually the only one that has been able to match the volume of Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane outlanded Volkov and did control the fight, 135 significant strikes to 115. That is a pretty close margin when you look at other fights. Francis Ngannou was able to make it close, it was 60-40, but he beat Derek Lewis by outlanding him significantly. I believe he outlanded Taito Ivasa like 90-20. John Jones is, that's the fight. But Sergey Spivak, he outlanded like 114 strikes to 10, or something along those lines, just dominated him. And that's the thing about Gane, is he's been able to outvolume every single opponent in his career, and yes, he did land more volume against Alexander Volkov, but Volkov was still able to make it kind of close in the numbers game. Yes, he lost the fight. Yes, I do think he probably loses the fight again against Gane, but I think that's something to bring up. That's the fact that he's not going to be completely outvolumed on the feet in this matchup. One thing I find very interesting, though, in that fight is Volkov, despite losing on the feet, never shot for a takedown, and it's no secret that Volkov does have pretty solid grappling. He is a striker for the most part, but he can wrestle and he can grapple. He does have a few submission wins. He's got that submission win by Ezekiel choke against Taito Ivasa in a fight which he did look to use some grappling. And I think in this one here against Gane, we could potentially see Volkov look for takedowns, because in that first fight, Gane actually attempted 4 takedowns on Volkov. He didn't get any of them, but he still attempted them. I think maybe we could see Volkov come in there with a little bit more of a mixed game plan, but I do think that Gane is going to be too athletic, too high volume for him, and I do think he probably does win another decision in that rematch. Now we have Lerone Murphy fighting against Dan Ige. I picked Lerone Murphy to actually defeat Edson Barboza, and that was not a very popular pick at all at the time, and Murphy had a very, very good performance. I have to give him a lot of credit in that one there, and Edson Barboza is a guy that was turning away prospects in the main events. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. I think Sadiq Youssef fought against him in a main event, and we saw Barboza find a lot of success late in that fight, but we saw Lerone Murphy able to just find a lot of success over the 5 rounds of the matchup against Edson Barboza. Prior to that, he beat Josh Kulibau, which is a good win at the time, but it hasn't really aged that well, I will be honest. And then, argument that Santos could have won that fight, but that's a tough fight on short notice. Dan Ige went out there and fought against Diogo Lopes, and he gave Diogo Lopes a very tough fight. And in my honest opinion, I actually think that he actually exposed Diogo Lopes' sloppy striking, which we haven't really seen anyone expose before. Like, we all knew that Lopes is not a technical striker at all, he is a brawler, but Ige really made him look bad on the feet. I know Lopes is not bad on the feet, but you guys can kind of understand what I mean if you've seen the fight, when Lopes really is just kind of throwing bombs, and Ige is keeping it a lot more technical. Ige is a boxer that can mix in the wrestling, but in my opinion, I just don't see it being a harder fight for Lerone Murphy than Edson Barboza, and Ige in that matchup against Diego Lopez. He didn't necessarily take the most amount of damage, but Lopez was still landing some pretty big shots on him, and I do think that we are going to see Lerone Murphy find success in this matchup. It is worth noting, though, that Dan Ige must always be in good shape, because, man, his cardio was good for a 4-hour short notice fight, even though he didn't cut weight, but still. It's pretty nuts. I do think that Lerone Murphy is going to win a decision, though. I am not, like, super high, as in, like, future champion on Lerone Murphy just yet, but I do think he's a very good prospect. Keep your eye out for from England. Ankalaev, here we go. Here is the big narrative. I have been actually kind of leading the charge. I haven't been leading the charge. I mean, there's probably other people, but I have been one of those people that has been saying that I actually don't necessarily think that Magomed Ankalaev has actually done enough to earn a title shot. Now, he just beat Johnny Walker. Walker just lost recently. That's like his best win. I mean, he beat Anthony Smith. That doesn't look good. He beat Thiago Santos. That doesn't look good. And he lost 3 rounds against Jan Blachowicz. I know it was his draw because of the 10-8 in the last round, but he lost the first 3 rounds against Jan and then need Walker on the ground. So Ankalaev is 1-1-1 in his last 3 fights, and there are people campaigning for him to get a title shot. I feel like right now is actually the right time to give Ankalaev a title shot because there actually is no other clear-cut contenders. So, although I feel like Ankalaev probably isn't necessarily super deserving of a title shot, I do feel like there is no one else for Alex Pereira to fight right now, and I do kind of wonder what Alex Pereira was planning on doing, and I think it has come out that he is going to be taking a break until the start of next year, which does make sense because he did fight on short notice at UFC 300, he fought on short notice at UFC 303, so it'll be interesting to kind of see what comes out of that. And for Ankalaev, I think this is a high risk, somewhat low reward fight. I do think that if he wins, he's going to get the title shot no matter what, so I guess it is high risk, high reward, but Rakic, like, just isn't, like, a bum, you know what I mean? Like, he's dangerous, man. He went to war with Yuri Prochazka. He had Yuri Prochazka hurt on the feet, found a lot of success against him on the feet, was finding some success against Jan Blachowicz before he got injured, but Rakic has power, and Ankalaev, we've seen hurt on the feet before. You know, Thiago Santos dropped him, and that's not a good look at all coming into this one here, but Ankalaev is just going to ultimately probably wrestle Rakic, even though I think that Rakic genuinely has a shot to win, and there will be people that, I mean, the Dagestan fans they're getting out of control now, my goodness, but Rakic has a chance to knock out Ankalaev, and that is just a fact, because Thiago Santos nearly did it, so yeah, I do think Ankalaev wins, though. I do think he wins with the wrestling, but it's a very high risk sort of fight. As I said, I do feel like only coming off 1 win in, 2 years isn't really, like, necessarily a title shot earning, but there's no one else. There really is no one else, and he probably should be fighting Alex Pereira right now, but I understand that Pereira probably wants a break because he just fought 2 times on short notice. Now we have Renat Fakhretdinov fighting against Rizaboev. I like Fakhretdinov in this fight, mainly for the main reason that I just don't like Rizaboev at 170. I thought he looked slow. I thought he looked bad, even, against Buckley at 170 pounds. Yeah, I just think Rizaboev's a middleweight, man. Like, I understand that he's got the weirdest build of all time when he's got very, very thin, like, arms, legs. His whole body's thin. Maybe we've got a full kind of photo of him. Not really. Like, he's got very, very thin legs. I understand that he can make 170 even though being so tall, but I just don't think this is a good matchup for him necessarily. And I think 170 isn't his spot. I understand that I think I was actually campaigning for him to go down to 170 after his fights at 185 pounds, but I couldn't have been more wrong. I could not have been more wrong. Rizaboev, he's a middleweight. He's a middleweight for sure. Just because you can make 170 doesn't really mean you are a welterweight, and we saw Rizaboev find good success in the UFC at 185. I don't know why he's really kind of just really trying to work his body to make 170, because it can't be an easy weight cut, and even then, he looks slowed down because of it. I do think that Renat Fakhretdinov can out-wrestle Rizaboev. Rizaboev can get taken down. I think he will get taken down. On the feet, it's going to be interesting because Rizaboev he's going to be so much taller and so much longer than Fakhretdinov, even though he's got pretty short arms, I guess. But yeah, I do think we are going to see Fakhretdinov find the success in the wrestling. And then to quickly talk about a couple of interesting matchups here. Kennedy Nzechukwu now moving up to heavyweight. Interesting move because he doesn't have a very good chin. The thing about Njoku, though, is like he has all of the attributes to find success at 205 pounds. He's 6'5" with an 83-inch reach. He's got all of the athletic ability. He's got all of the size ability. He just had terrible fight IQ. He just has a terrible chin. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. He just didn't make it happen. And now this move to heavyweight is odd. Should he be able to beat Marcos? Probably. I don't know really know. I was going to say he should be able to beat Marcos, but I don't think people will be picking him. And he just absolutely smoked Junior Taffa with the leg kicks throughout that whole fight. Yeah, man, Marcus Rogério de Lima, just an odd-looking bloke. But, yeah, I don't know. I just don't know about why is he's got no chin, man. Like, Marcos he's old, but he's still kind of got it. He knocked out Arlovsky, even though Arlovsky knocked down Arlovsky, not knocked him out. But, yeah, and I do think that Jeff Neal defeats RDA. He's going to be 40 years old. RDA is kind of interesting because he's been moving up between 170 and 155. He's not a big welterweight at all. I like him a lot more at 155. And in fact, he fought Gamrot and kind of made it interesting against Gamrot. Before that, he was at Luque. Lost to Luque. I thought he beat Luque, man. Who did Luque lose to recently? Sorry, guys. You've caught me at midnight right now recording this. And I was at university again on a Sunday. So I'm tired. Who did Luque lose to? Buckley. How did I get them confused? Anyway, yeah, I think Jeff Neal beats RDA on the feet. I think he defends the takedowns. I think a fight that you can look at is the Shavkat Rakhmonov fight because he made Shavkat Rakhmonov look very human, and Rakhmonov kind of did have to come back a little bit in that matchup. I think that he's going to kind of present more danger to RDA on the feet. I think he's going to find success on the feet. So that's my pick. I don't know if anyone has predicted this fight so far. People are on Neil. I agree. That makes sense. That's kind of it. I do apologize towards the end. There really isn't probably my best video, but I am going to do an individual breakdown for Topuria versus Holloway. There's a lot to be said about that matchup. It is a very interesting fight that I'm very much looking forward to. What's your favorite fight on the card? What are your predictions for the card? What do you think about the card? Please let me know in the comments below.